Welcome back, and we are up to week 4 of our study, and it touches on sexual purity when all else fails, run, and it's coming from Genesis 39 6 through 20. The purpose of this particular study is to demonstrate that character, in this case, tested by moral temptation, is ultimately lived out in our daily choices, especially the choices that no one else sees except God. Now, this account of the life of Joseph has been paralleled with the life of Christ as described in Matthew 4. In each case, before Joseph or Jesus, greatest impact was felt, there was a test, a temptation that had been passed. The biblical equation is clear. Testing and temptation often precede character development and maximum usefulness to God. Romans 5 1 through 5 links suffering to character and hope. James 1 2 through 4 links testing with perseverance and maturity. Joseph's story connects testing with living a life of integrity before the God who is always with us. Now, question 1. For question 1, outside the dialogue between Jesus and Satan in his great temptation in Matthew 4 1 through 11, the story of Joseph and this woman is perhaps the most vivid and detailed story of temptation and resisting temptation in the Bible. The writer starts with a blunt description of Joseph's physique and good looks. The attention to specifics is most likely included to underscore the fact that this was a legitimate temptation for Joseph. This type of physical description in the Bible is given 4 times, here and describing David, Solomon, and Absalom. The reader might logically ask, but wouldn't Potiphar have been a man much older than Joseph, and therefore his wife as well, thus making this older woman easier for Joseph to resist? In that culture, a man of Potiphar's stature could have had many wives, and when he tired of older ones, he married a younger one. Thus, it is likely that Joseph and Potiphar's wife were close in age, and she may have actually been younger than Joseph. Now, I'd like to argue that obviously, as older women, that you can be attractive, period. And we hear the joke, a cougar. But beautiful women come in all different kinds of ages, and beautiful women of her caliber, the way that she would really be set apart. Probably just everything from the massages, the oils, the way that she could take care of herself would be a stark contrast to women who were younger than her, women that were her age. So this is probably a very attractive woman. Question 2. The description of Joseph as well-built and handsome probably indicates that Potiphar's wife's attraction to him was motivated by physical lust and desire. Perhaps Potiphar, the older man, was no longer muscular and handsome, and perhaps his virility was waning. These are all perhapses. Potiphar's wife may have also been motivated by rebellion. In that culture, she was a little better than a slave to her husband. So flirting with the chief of the household was one way to get back at Potiphar, her master. 2 other factors that may have provoked Potiphar's wife. Attempted seduction include she might have been bored and looking for excitement. She could have just set up a trap placed by Satan in effort to derail Joseph and thus prevent his role in saving the tribes of Israel. Question 3. Joseph had several good reasons for saying yes to her several advances. She was probably beautiful. We talked about that. He could rationalize that God had sent her to help him deal with his loneliness. And he could have concluded that no one else would ever find out. He might have thought she's powerful and connected and in high places. She could help me get my dreams fulfilled. Question 6. Joseph's reasons for resistance included loyalty to his master. But his question in Genesis 39:6 reveals that he was living his life before God as his audience of one. Note that he didn't say, "How could I do this thing and sin against Potiphar?" Nor, "How could I do this thing and sin against you?" His moral character was motivated by relationship with God. How could I do this wicked thing and sin against God? Some commentators speculate that Joseph was exceedingly cautious in this area because he had seen the damage of Reuben's immorality and what it had brought on him, and pursued his father's concubine. And that's in Genesis 35:22 and 49:3-4. Question 7. When the situation intensified, Joseph ran. That's Genesis 39:13. We don't know if Joseph walked in the house knowing that she had cleared everyone out or not. We do know that when she confronted him with the hottest enticement, he was close enough to her for her to grab his garment. And when she did, Joseph stopped resisting verbally. He ran out of the house and he left the garment behind. Several other things to note with regard to Joseph's resistance. First, note again that Joseph's garment symbolizes his life. Besides the interesting parallel to Joseph's brothers taking his cloak, it should be noted here again that the cloak is to serve to identify Joseph. Second, Joseph's strength in the face of temptation led Muhammad to set him forth as an example in the Quran. And that's in Surah 12, and it features Joseph's resistance and running. Potiphar's wife trapped him in the house by bolting the doors, and that's listed in Surah 12:23. But he ran, and they raced with one another to the door, and she tore his shirt from behind. Surah 12:25. Muhammad emphasized the fact that Joseph was running, and she was trying to catch him. In the Quran, Joseph used the shirt torn from behind in his defense. Surah 12:26-27. Other stories like Joseph and Potiphar's wife exist, and may simply be another rendering of his same story or carry over later in the story. The 19th dynasty, 1225 BC, Egyptian tale of Anubis and Bada has similarities to the story of Joseph and Potiphar's wife. Questions 9 and 12. Joseph's obedient action before God and the subsequent consequences, he goes to prison under false charges, serve as the biblical reminder that sometimes obedience is not rewarded. Joseph obeyed God to the utmost, and he ended up on the cross, so to speak. Question 10. Scholars note that Potiphar's position as a captain of the Pharaoh's guard would have made him also the chief executioner. As a result, he could have served as a judge, jury, and executioner in Joseph's case. And Joseph, as a slave without rights, was defenseless before his accuser. Add to this fact that Potiphar's wife had made sure that there was no one in the house to observe the interchange who could then object to her accusation or defend Joseph, and you would fully expect that Joseph would have been executed. The probable reason that Potiphar did not have Joseph put to death was that he did not believe his wife. Perhaps he knew her to be a liar, or he knew Joseph to be a man of character, or both. But Joseph was not killed, instead, probably to save face. Potiphar imprisoned Joseph. This action set the stage for the next chapter in Joseph's story. Rather than being executed for rape, as dictated in, for instance, the Middle Assyrian laws, Joseph was put into a royal prison holding political prisoners, and this may have been a bit more comfortable as prisons go. But more importantly, it will put him in contact with the members of Pharaoh's court. Question 11. We're going to dig a little deeper. This is a little lengthier study. When the temptation gets too heated, run. Dietrich Bonhoeffer described the temptation vividly in this account. In our members, there is a slumbering inclination towards desire, which is both sudden and fierce. With irresistible power, desire seizes mastery over the flesh. All at once, a secret smoldering fire is kindled. The flesh burns and is in flames. It makes no difference whether it's sexual desire, or ambition, or vanity, or desire for revenge, or love of fame, power, or greed for money. Or finally, that strange desire for the beauty of the world or nature. Joy in God is, of course, being extinguished in us, and we seek all our joy in the creature. At this moment, God is quite unreal to us. He loses all reality, and only desire for the creature is real. The only reality is the devil. Satan does not here fill us with hatred of God, but with the forgetfulness of God. The lust thus aroused envelops the mind and the will of man in the deepest darkness. The power of discrimination and of a decision are taken from us. It is here that everything within me rises up against the word of God. In Proverbs 7:6-27 shows us another young man who, unlike Joseph, did not run from temptation. Instead, he walked right into it, like an ox to the slaughter, or like a bird rushing into a snare. This account in Proverbs, probably written autobiographically by Solomon, describes the destruction wrought in his own life because of his inability to resist sexual temptation.